Hi, I'm Arundhati Venkatesh. I write picture books, chapter books, and middle grade fiction. These are some of the books I've written. I also contribute to anthologies and write short stories for textbooks. A funny anecdote from my childhood. So, when I was about 9 years old, we moved to this tiny hill town in the Western Ghats. There was nothing there, not even a shop actually. It was just this hill, and to get to school, I had to um cross a stream, and there was a bridge that would get flooded when it rained heavily. And the stream, there was this nalla which features in the book that I've written, Petu Pumpkin Tiffin Thief. The kids go fishing for worms there, and that nalla would also have buffaloes in the afternoon when I got home for lunch. And I got fascinated by those buffaloes, which is probably why I wrote I Want a Pet, in which there's a buffalo barging into Jasbir's house. So a lot of the anecdotes, actually, if you read my books, you'll get to know. It was a place where I had a lot of time to dream. I would just hear, there was a river that flowed just outside our house, and I would hear the sound of the river all day and all night long. There was a waterfall just about 200 meters away from where we lived. There was a lot of time to just stare, and if I looked out at the lawn, I'd suddenly see a snake going past, a huge long one, or hornbills nesting in the trees. To get to school, sometimes I had to brave a troop of langurs who could get really aggressive. So all that kind of stuff, and because we had a lot of time, we did a lot of silly things like forming secret societies again, like the kids, the awesome fivesome in the Petu Pumpkin book. So that was a lot of fun, and I also used to try and hypnotize my brother to get all the secrets out of him, which is what the kids do in Petu Pumpkin Cheater Peter. And there were dogs also, which featured in my childhood quite often, apart from trees, which you'll see in a lot of my books. So my brother would bring home these little puppies who would be really cute, and we'd name them Fluffy and Pongo because they were so sweet, and feed them milk using an ink dropper. But then within a few months, those little cute puppies would turn into huge dogs who would who I would forget what they look like because they look so different, but they never forgot me, and they'd follow me around because they were so happy to see me again. But I was terrified, which is why there are these huge dogs and kids climbing up fences to escape from them in Petu Pumpkin Tooth Troubles. Also, my principal had, when I was studying in Bombay, the principal of my school had two huge Great Danes, and I had to go past his house to go to school every day. And I was quite small, I was like 5 or 6 years old, and they look exactly like these dogs in Petu Pumpkin Tooth Troubles, which Shilpa Ranade has drawn beautifully. I don't know how she knew exactly what I was terrified of, because those were the dogs when I was 5 or 6 years old I was really scared of. So yeah, all these anecdotes, if you read my books, you'll find out a lot about what I did in my childhood and all the fun that I had with my friends. A book title for myself, let's see. It could be the title of one of the books I've written, Bookasura, because when I was a kid, I devoured books by the dozen, just like the book eating monster in this book. But I think what would be better would be Petu Pumpkin, a series of books I've written, because I eat a lot. And when I'm not eating, I think of food. I'm dreaming of food all the time. So yeah, I think I'll go for Petu Pumpkin. I don't know if I decided to be an author, but I always read a lot as a kid, and I enjoyed writing. I wrote a lot, But I never thought of writing as a career or becoming a writer or an author, because I didn't know that people who were alive wrote books. I thought that books were written by people who were dead. So it was only much later as an adult that I started wanting to write and started publishing books. I was actually working in London and the public libraries there. I would borrow books, and I realized that there are so many wonderful children's books. I wanted to do something like that in India, because I felt that there could be such stories set in India, in different places in India, featuring characters just like the people we know and we meet and we see around us. And that's how it all began. I've always wanted to explore Africa, so that would be one, and South America for sure. I also want to go to a lot of places in India and spend time, live with the people there, understand their lives. So that's another. The other thing that I want to do is to revisit the places I grew up in. I went to seven schools and lived in a lot of places across the country in my childhood. So going back there is something I'd like to do. I've been able to do that to some extent because of the literature festivals that I go to and the schools that I visit. But there are places that I still would like to go to. So yeah. My favorite storyteller from childhood would definitely be my grandfather. He was an excellent storyteller. He told me a story sitting on this large swing at the entrance to the house that they lived in a small temple town. We'd visit them in summer every year, and I would keep pestering him for stories. As soon as one ended, I would want the next one, and I wouldn't let him go. So he would tell me stories from the Ramayana and the Mahabharata, but he was best at the Ulysses stories. He would do the voices and the expressions, and it was great fun. So, Ramanujan, which is my latest book, is actually dedicated to my grandfather. The stories that he told me, he also shared a lot of puzzles with me in story form, and he was very fond of jokes and puns and card games, so all of that as well. So, yeah, my grandfather definitely. I read voraciously as a child. I was an indiscriminate reader. I read everything I could lay my hands on. The books I enjoyed the most were Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, Huckleberry Finn, adventures like The Count of Monte Cristo, Treasure Island, the Asterix comics. Those were great fun. I really enjoyed the humor and the puns. And I realized that history and humor could go together thanks to the Asterix comics. But if I had to name one book, it would be To Kill a Mockingbird. Um, it was great fun. There was so much humor in it, but there was also a lot of wisdom. And even today, when I read it, it feels like it's still relevant, and I've learned so much just by reading that one book. So yeah, To Kill a Mockingbird. The starting point for a book is an idea which usually comes from something I've heard someone say or something I've read, and then it sort of gradually develops in my head and grows into a story. The characters I have to live with for a long time, so they inhabit my head, and there's a lot of clamor there. I'm thinking of the story all the time in my waking hours and also when I'm asleep, till it reaches a point when the story just bursts out of me and I have no option but to write. That's how it happens. I can't say I enjoy writing. It's just something I have to do. and it's the only way I can process my feelings and anything that I'm grappling with at the time. Uh, it's something that I have to come to terms with, and only writing helps me do that. So I'm not sure I enjoy writing, but what I enjoy doing these days is cycling. I cycle around aimlessly in my neighborhood, and while I'm cycling, I stare at the trees, and people watching is something that I indulge in as I'm cycling. I like to feel the wind on my face. So, yeah. So it's always a mix of imagination and reality. The kids in the Petu Pumpkin series, or the characters in Bookasura and Kubandi, whether it's the human characters or the monsters in the books, it is a mix of imagination and reality. One book that's different is the latest one, Ramanujan, because Ramanujan was a mathematician who really existed. So I couldn't just imagine things, I had to stay true to history. So that was a challenge. It had to be interesting and engaging as well. So one of the things that helped was that Ramanujan, not just did he love numbers, he loved puns as well. He was really fond of cracking jokes, and he laughed at his own jokes. So that made my job a little easier than it would have been otherwise. I don't know if I have a message for young readers, but have fun, live your life fully, experience all the emotions fully, and read if you like to. Don't worry about publishing. If you are interested in writing, write for the fun of it. And the only thing you can do to improve your writing is to read a lot and to really experience life, because all that you go through in life is what will feed your writing. All these books are available at the House of Books and Tales. You can borrow them from the library or place orders for your own copies. Have fun reading.